At least 17 people have been killed after a Russian missile struck an outdoor market in the town of Kostyantynivka. Ukrainian authorities said that 32 others were left wounded in the attack. The town is close to the front lines around Bakhmut and frequently crowded with military personnel. Footage of the attack shared by President Zelensky showed civilians walking along the market street before the missile struck. The visual showed a fierce fire and plumes of thick black smoke billowing from burnt-out cars and buildings as firefighters responded at the scene. The strike came hours after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken landed in Kyiv on his third visit. Moscow says it has shot down 5 Ukrainian drones near the capital Moscow, leaving 1 person injured. The drone exploded on the 5th floor of the block of flats, breaking the windows of the 5 flats and damaging 4 vehicles. The Defense Ministry says 1 drone was downed at 60 kilometers southeast of Moscow at around 3 a.m. local time. No casualties were reported. Russia has weathered a wave of Ukrainian drone attacks in recent months that sporadically damage buildings, including in Moscow. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken made an unannounced visit to Ukraine on Wednesday, signaling Washington's support amid Kyiv's slow-going counter-offensive against Russia. During this visit, Blinken met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky expressed his gratitude for the U.S. support and assistance received in the energy sector ahead of the winter. However, Blinken didn't talk much about his assessment of Kyiv's counter-offensives, but expressed that progress had accelerated in the past couple of weeks. Following his unannounced visit to Kyiv, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has announced a new billion-dollar aid to Ukraine, saying that the new package could help Ukraine's counteroffensive gain momentum. The new U.S. aid would include the HIMARS missile launch systems, the Javelin anti-tank weapons, the Abrams tank, among other weapon systems. The U.S. has provided Ukraine with over $40 billion of security assistance since Russia's invasion began last year. Blinken also announced that the U.S. is working with Ukraine to find alternative routes for its grain shipments after the collapse of the Black Sea grain deal. Rising global tensions and the ongoing Myanmar crisis took focus during the last day of the ASEAN summit. Speaking at the opening of the East Asia Forum, Indonesian President Joko Widodo urged fellow leaders to diffuse tensions and not create new conflicts or wars. Vice President of the United States Kamala Harris, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the Chinese Premier Li Qiang and the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov are some of the leaders who are attending the summit. Indonesia's chair of the 10-member ASEAN is expected to symbolically hand over the chair to Laos. The Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has said he had a frank and constructive discussion with China's Premier Li Qiang. The discussion took place on the sidelines of the meetings hosted by the Association of Southeast Asian Nations in Jakarta. Albanese says he raised human rights cases, including those of 2 detained Australian journalists. The Australian Prime Minister also confirmed he would visit China later this year. Meanwhile, China responded saying it welcomes a planned visit by the Australian Prime Minister. The Japanese Prime Minister Kishida says he explained Japan's position on the release of the treated radioactive water From the Fukushima nuclear plant to Chinese Premier Li Qiang, Japan started releasing the water from the wrecked plant into the ocean last month, drawing strong criticism from China. In retaliation, China has imposed a blanket ban on all fishing imports from Japan. Japan has launched the H-2A rocket carrying the moon lander of the National Space Agency. This comes following 3 postponements last month due to unfavorable weather conditions. The rocket carrying the precision moon lander is expected to touch down on the lunar surface in the span of 4 to 6 months. The rocket is also carrying a research satellite which has been developed by NASA, the European Space Agency, and the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. The moon lander was launched by Japan just a month after India's Chandrayaan-3 mission landed near the south pole of the moon, which was seen as a historic triumph for space exploration. A New York State judge has rejected Donald Trump's bid to delay a scheduled trial of a lawsuit accusing him and his family members of overvaluing assets by billions of dollars. Trump and the other defendants have said that the trial should be briefly delayed until 3 weeks. Earlier this year, the judge had said that October 2nd trial date would not change come hell or high water. The Attorney General said the fraud enabled Trump to inflate his net worth by as much as $2.23 billion. The defendants have denied wrongdoing, and Trump has called the trial a witch hunt. The U.S. envoy to the United Nations visited Chad's border with Sudan and met the refugees fleeing ethnic and sexual violence. During the visit, Washington expressed its commitment to prevent and respond mass atrocities in the Sudan war. The U.S. envoy also announced high-profile sanctions targeting leaders of Sudan's paramilitary force and the army. The United States announced $163 million in aid and urged other nations to set up. The UN says half of Sudan's 49 million people need help and has appealed for $2.6 billion. So far, it has secured only 26% of this amount. The British police have launched a nationwide manhunt for the former soldier suspected of terror offences. The suspect, who was awaiting a trial in London, escaped from prison on Wednesday. It is believed he escaped via a prison kitchen by strapping himself to the underside of a food delivery van. The 21-year-old suspect, named Daniel Abed, is accused of trying to elicit information likely to be useful to a person committing or preparing an act of terrorism. The suspect also served in the army but was discharged in May. Sudanese Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan is visiting Doha for talks with Qatar's Emir. Sudan's ruling sovereign council says it is his third trip abroad during his early 5-month war with the paramilitary. Burhan and Qatar's Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani will discuss bilateral relations, issues of common interest, and the situation in Sudan. Sudan's regular army has been at war with the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces since April 15th, led by Burhan's former deputy Mohammed Hamdan Daglo. The main border crossing between Afghanistan and Pakistan has remained closed for a second day. This after security forces from both countries exchanged fire on Wednesday. Local residents reported the sound of gunfire by the Turkham crossing and said people around the busy border area near the Khyber Pass fled once the firing started. Security officials from the area who spoke on condition of anonymity said the Taliban and Pakistani forces had exchanged fire. However, no casualties have been reported yet. Homes were destroyed and cars were wrecked after a massive water tank burst in Brazil's Florianopolis. The accident happened on September 6, leaving behind a trail of destruction. The tank belonged to local water utility Casan, which serves Brazil's Santa Catarina area. Reports suggest the tank had approximately 3 million litres of water when it burst. No serious injuries were reported. 2 people were treated for minor injuries and local authorities are investigating the cause of the accident. Peru's President Dina Boluarte reshuffled 6 posts in her cabinet, the second partial reshuffle in her 8-month-old administration, though she retained ministers overseeing the key economy and energy and mining portfolios. Peru's Minister of Education, Justice, Transport, Labour, Production and Agrarian Development were dismissed. However, cabinet changes are frequent in the world's second-largest copper-producing nation, which has seen 6 presidents in just 5 years. The new ministers were sworn in at the government palace in the capital Lima. Boluarte took office in December after her predecessor, Pedro Castillo, was ousted and arrested after trying to dissolve Congress. Nigeria's Presidential Election Tribunal has ruled that the country's main opposition parties have failed to prove claims of electoral malpractice against the governing All Progressive Congress in February's polls. Judges rejected all claims made by the Labour Party, including charges of electoral fraud and allegations that President Bola Tinubu was ineligible to run. No legal challenge to the outcome of a presidential election has succeeded in Nigeria, which returned to democracy in 1999 after 3 decades of military rule. Gabon's military leaders have said the ousted President Ali Bongo has been given freedom of movement and can pursue medical treatment abroad. Bongo had been detained at his official residence since he was overthrown by his presidential guard last month, finding his family's 56-year rule over the Central African nation. Gabon's coup is the 8th in West and Central Africa in the last 3 years. It has raised concerns about a contagion of military takeovers across the region that have erased democratic progress made in the last 2 decades. At least 3 people have died and 4 are missing after torrential rains flooded homes and businesses and destroyed infrastructure in central Greece. Since Monday, Storm Daniel has triggered landslides, destroyed a bridge, caused a collapse of power poles and carried away dozens of cars in muddy waters. This comes days after a 2-week deadly wildfire is starting to neutralize in the northern region. Authorities have said that the weather was the most extreme in terms of rainfall ever since the records have been kept. At least 7 people have been killed and almost 30 are injured after flash floods ravaged northwest Turkey. Around 125 kilograms per square meter of rainfall hit Istanbul in less than 6 hours, equal to what the city would typically expect in a month of September. Heavy downpours caused several cars to float in flooded waters of Istanbul's northern districts. Istanbul's municipality said the workers rescued 157 people stranded by the floods overnight. Torrential rain and winds caused by a cyclone have left at least 36 people dead in southern Brazil, flooding homes and swelling rivers. Firefighters in the Brazilian southern city of Mucum rescued flood victims trapped inside their homes by resorting to boats. A drone video has captured the scale of destruction. President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva was offered the federal government's full support to the affected people. Scientists say the summer of 2023 was the hottest on record. The 3-month period from June to August surpassed previous records by a large margin. Last month was also the hottest August on record, globally the third straight month in a row to set such a record following the hottest ever June and July. Pursuing efforts to limit the global temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius is a central pledge of the Paris International Climate Change Agreement adopted by 196 countries in 2015. July 2023 remains the hottest month ever recorded. Scotland is considering banning single-use vaping products over worries that the colourful and inoffensive packaging is encouraging young people to take up smoking. The potential crackdown on the vastly growing vaping industry is not only happening in Scotland. Countries such as China, France, Australia are among the others who are already making moves to curb the habit. Scotland's First Minister has said that the government would consult imposing an outright ban. If the ban goes ahead, Scotland won't be alone. Earlier this month, French Prime Minister had also said that the disposable vapes will soon be banned in the country. European stock markets have opened lower today, with investors assessing Eurozone data releases and US inflationary pressures. The stock 600 clocked its 6th straight negative session. Technology stocks were among the worst performers, losing around 1% of their value. The Indian rupee opened marginally higher but soon erased all the gains to trade flat against the US dollar in a thinly traded market. Traders said that they were watching for any intervention by the Reserve Bank of India as the domestic currency hovers near its record low. The rupee touched an intraday low of 83.11 against the greenback. Shares of HCL Technologies hit their 52-week high after the company said it had signed a multi-year managed public cloud service agreement with German technology and high-tech industry giant Siemens AG. HCL Tech will focus on automating the public cloud environment while adhering to Siemens' high security standards.